Morning, folks. This is Mike Shea from slyflourish.com and twitter.com/slyflourish, here with another episode of Sly Flourish's Lazy DM Prep. Typically on this show, I prepare for my Sunday D&D game online on Twitch, and while talking to you fine folks in Twitch chat and talking about other D&D things. Today, however, I don't have a game. It snowed. It's crazy snowy here. So I canceled the game, and I'm going to spend the day doing some writing and some other nonsense. But I hate to miss this show too, so I thought I would hop on. And we could chat about D&D, we could talk about my game, we could talk about other things as well. Whatever you guys want to talk about if you're here in Twitch, say hello, and we could talk about whatever you want. I have a few things I was considering talking about, but this is a good time to just kind of talk about whatever. We're also an hour later. Normally I do this at 10 o'clock. Today I'm doing it at 11 because I slept in, because it's snowy. I also had to shovel, but that's done. Once again, if you're here in Twitch chat, say hello and let me know if anything is going weird. It looks like I'm coming across okay. I don't see anything strange going on, but you never know. So let's see. Last night, let me pull up my little list of topics here. We can switch back. So last night, my friend Enrique Bertran, the newbie DM, he's on Twitter at newbiedm and on the internet at newbiedm.com, I think. Let me check here. Newbiedm.com. I'll pop his website in our little window. We got online to talk about all kinds of things, but what's been on Enrique's mind recently was Dungeon World. If you guys have not seen or heard of Dungeon World, this is it. You can, I think it's Creative Commons, so you can actually read the text online, I'm pretty sure. But pick it up. It's a cheap PDF. And for DMs, I think it's an outstanding system to read. Mostly what resonates with me is its philosophy towards running D&D. It has a couple of key philosophy points that I think really sort of shift what being a DM is like, including be a fan, play to see what happens is one. There's a whole list of DM things in here. I should read them. See if I can find them real quick. Play to see what happens, and let's see, the GM. Play to find out what happens. Fill the characters' lives with adventure. Portray a fantastic world. Address the characters, not the players. Embrace the fantastic. Leave blanks. But there's also a be fans of the characters somewhere. Yeah, be a fan of the characters, right? So these are all philosophies, and I think, especially in the 4th edition days, the 3.5 and 4th edition days, that was not always common. So it was a big shift for me. Hey, my mom is here. Hi, Mom. She's watching. She can chat about D&D too. Anyway, if you want to see that, the link is right here. I will paste it in the chat, although you don't want to go and watch it right now, because then you would not be able to watch this. But it was a fun 45-minute, very casual conversation between Enrique and I. That I very much enjoyed. Save that for later. It was a good time. So we're hoping to do that again, because I think Enrique and I have been friends for, I think, over a decade now, or about a decade now. And I just love talking to him. We're both about the same age. We both kind of come through D&D at the same times. One of his best childhood friends in Miami now plays in my game in Northern Virginia, completely by accident. We had no coordination. It just turned out that one of the players at my game, who was a friend of a friend here, also happens to be his friend from childhood long ago, and we found that out months later. So that was very funny. So what else? I thought, since I normally prepare for Tomb of Annihilation, this is a good time to take a step back. Mom Flourish, Catharsis says. That's a good name. It's a good time to take a step back and really think about Tomb of Annihilation. I'm going to close my door so my wife doesn't hear. I want to be able to talk about spoilers. I feel so Tomb of Annihilation to me is a nearly perfect adventure as far as a big, hairy, published adventure goes. And I don't normally review stuff. And so the interesting thing is I always find reviews to be a difficult thing for adventures like this, because I can't really review it until I'm done running it. And, you know, how often are you done running it? Looks like my window's a little off here. Sorry, you could see my edge of something. There we go. That looks fine. I'm all bloomy. My head's all... got a big reflective head. Look at that. So it's a nearly perfect adventure. And I think about this often with published adventures, about like how refined is the lens? Is it like Storm King's Thunder? The aperture was really wide. It was a huge set. It was like the whole Sword Coast from like Baldur's Gate. I don't know if it went down to Candlekeep, but it might have. I've got the map I'm looking at on my wall here. All the way up to Icewind Dale. So it's like, how many miles is that? What's the key on that map? I don't even know. But it's like 5,000 miles or something. It's ridiculous how much distance that adventure covers. So just in sheer scope, it's so big. Like the travel time could take years, right? I mean, it's nuts. So, and also it had hundreds of short descriptions of places. So many places would have 3 sentences written on them, and you know, just one little place. And I felt like that was too many places with too little detail. And Navy DM has a thought about how to make Tomb better, and yeah, we'll get to that. I think you have a point. I'm on the end of finishing an article talking about this. Yeah, on the SKT front, my group has been playing that for 1.5 years. We played about 1.5 years for that one. It's enormous, and there's points where, like, I remember, and I don't know if I talked about it in this show, because I don't think I really started the show till we were doing Tomb of Annihilation, but I remember that my players at one point, where I kind of overheard them talking to each other, and they're like, what are we doing? They're like, we're having fun, and I am enjoying, like, they were deep into a plot in Daggerford. All kinds of, like, political battles between Daggerford and another place, and kings and queens and demons. It's a lot of fun, right? And I enjoyed it, and they enjoyed it, but they're like, where are the giants? You know? And I kind of said, like, you guys get to, like, the giant thing is a slow-moving wick, you know? You don't have to go handle giants all the time. But it was I remember it almost lost its focus completely. And instead of being like a nice, refined adventure about political intrigue in Daggerford, you know, like, which they had, right? There was a whole series of adventures written before 5 that was all focused on that area, the whole Daggerford area. And the Scourge of the Red Wizards, it was called. And it had Daggerford, and it also had Dragonspear Castle, like this whole thing. And I actually ran an adventure, a whole sort of mini campaign there, and I had a really good time with it. So that's too wide, and I don't know if they've done one that's too narrow. I'll be a little critical of Dragon Heist, Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Kind of critical, but Waterdeep Dragon Heist has like 192 pages. I don't know. I should go get it and see the actual page count, but it's more than 100 pages on a 5-level adventure. And the amount of detail that's put into that one is huge. It's a great big 256-page book. And where it could have been, you know, woulda, coulda, shoulda, and you know, pardon me for being another jackass sitting on the sidelines who gets to like, it should have been like this. It would have been nice if it had more time spent on Waterdeep overall and less time on the adventure, because the problem is if you run the adventure the way it's written, you're going to cover maybe a quarter of what's in that book for the adventure part. Like there's so much material and all of the seasons and everything, but it's not exactly that replayable either. It's not like Curse of Strahd where, you know, where the locations of the main items are can completely change how the adventure runs. In this one, you're generally going to the same beginning and same ending every time. It's just the path that you get there can kind of change. And I mean, I suppose you could say the same thing for Curse of Strahd. You're always going to end up fighting. You're always going to start off in the village of Barovia, and you're always going to end up fighting Strahd. But the path that you get there is different. So I don't know. Maybe it's different enough. Yeah, Navy DM says it could have been a booklet about the size of Last Mines of Phandelver, and then a big setting book. And if you look at what they did with the Ravnica book has a short adventure. It's like, and I think it's only like a level 1 adventure. So you'd want something bigger than that. But it has a short adventure wrapped by a big setting book. And I think it'd have been interesting if Waterdeep Dragon Heist spend a little bit more time on that, because like one whole chapter of that book, well, first of all, there's whole chapters of that book that aren't tied to the adventure at all. They're just layers of villains, and it's not really clear like how you use them. It says like, well, you might end up in a place like this, but the villains are all like super high level. So it was a little weird how that came together. And so I might say that is sort of the opposite of Storm King's Thunder, where Storm King's Thunder was really wide and big in both geographical scope and the number of places they cover and all of the different spots that they describe, but only in 2 or 3 sentences. The opposite is Dragon Heist, where they were really laser focused, and they said, we're going to give you a 5-level adventure with hundreds, more than 100 pages worth of material, and you can kind of pick the pieces of the pages that you want. And here are these other layers that you may or may not use. So that one was really focused. So then to me, the two that fall in between those, and then maybe more, I'd argue that Out of the Abyss also did a better job than this. That Out of the Abyss and let's take a look at what adventures we've got here. Adventures. There's so many. So one might argue that we'll just focus on Out of the Abyss and on Out of the Abyss, Curse of Strahd, and Tomb of Annihilation. They sort of had a different style. And theirs was fewer locations, still sandboxy adventures, still many different paths you can take, and then but better descriptions of the places. So like if you look at, we'll go to Out of the Abyss since we don't talk about that one very often. But I really like Out of the Abyss. So it has a very clear start. Oh, spoilers, by the way. This is gonna be full of spoilers. But Into the Darkness, chapter 2. You have like all of these different events that can take place, and each one has like, the hook horror lair. It has a full map of the lair, right? It's not, and multiple rooms. They're not huge, it's a small, like clearly a 1 session sort of adventure. Same with the Oozing Temple. And I ran these places and loved them. So much, more detail here than you saw in Storm King's Thunder. But obviously like only, these are 5-6 room dungeons, right? For a bunch of these places. And then it has these bigger locations, Gracklestug, Neverlight Grove, Blingden Stone, and I actually only got up to chapter 7. I never even finished the other chapters. And there's a lot going on in those. So there's a nice high level. I might actually run a high level Out of the Abyss adventure because I've never run it before. And I think there's fun to be had there. So this one had this sort of bigger focus on specific locations. Here's the Stone Giant Library, and it's got, lots of material here, little random events, little random things going on. I never even read this part. I should go back and read it. Does it have a map? I guess this one doesn't have a map, but many of these locations have a map. I bet you Tower of Vengeance has a map. Look at that place. I tell you, Out of the Abyss is a good one. That one doesn't have a map either. Maybe that's why I don't remember these places. They don't have maps. So Out of the Abyss and Out of the Abyss and Curse of Strahd and Tomb of Annihilation all have a similar focus to them, which is a fewer number, on the order of a couple dozen locations, with relatively high detail on what's going on there. And like if you look at Tomb of Annihilation, and we look at, it's got this great big Lands of Chult, right? And you could say like, well, Lands of Chult is sort of like the chapter in Storm King's Thunder, but unlike that one, most of these places have maps, even if it's like that's a bridge, a lot of these events, have like these small, 1 session-ish dungeon places, Camp Vengeance. And that's more than the maps, that's more than the material in Storm King's Thunder. And I think it gives the DM, like when I think about what an adventure brings, the advantages that an adventure brings, it brings things that a DM can't do or doesn't have the time to do. Who here has the talent to be able to draw a map like that and really think through how this works? And when you get into the tomb itself, the Tomb of the Nine Gods, like the design of the Tomb of the Nine Gods is really intricate and went through a lot of thought and play testing and stuff. And it's still got some issues, but it is super detailed. Like, you cannot improvise a dungeon like that. And you're probably, how many hours would it take you to make a dungeon like that? You know, with that, I mean, 7 levels deep and, you know, more than 100 rooms and all kinds of puzzles and all kinds of intricate stuff going on. A DM can't do that. And to me, you know, this map, like, here's Rackhammer, right? This is the kind of stuff, like, when you pay $50, or in some cases, if you're buying on Amazon, even cheaper, you know, the amount of money that it costs to make this adventure compared to the amount of money that you pay to buy it is so different. You know, that there's so much value there. And that's what I think a good adventure should be, is it should be the amount of energy that it took somebody to make it should be much greater than the amount of energy it took you to buy it, you know, considering how much money you pay. So Tomb, like I said, is a nearly perfect adventure, except for, and this is from what I've seen so far, but I'm almost done, 3 things. One is that the death curse is too extreme. As written, the death curse is every day people who have been resurrected are dying, which means you don't have a lot of time for exploration. You don't have a lot of time to take side paths. Luckily, that is an easy thing to fix. There's Teo Sabadia, Alpha Stream on Twitter, wrote a good supplement about how to handle the death curse differently, different ways to tweak the death curse. There's also just sort of a simpler one for me, which is just let go of it. Don't describe it as it's killing people every day. You know, you get to turn the dial on how big the curse is. Like, and you can describe it to the players to the players and to the characters that the death curse vacillates. It's not, you know, it isn't always heavy or always light. It sometimes it's not really existent, and then other times it scales way up. And you can use that as the DM as a big dial to turn to decide how much urgency you want to add in the adventure. So if it had been written that way, it'd have been perfect. But or for me anyway, right? It's an easy fix. The other problem is that there's a lot of NPCs that can join the party. Some of them can dramatically change the power balance of the game, especially Artist Simber and Dragonbait are 2 very powerful NPCs. And if they join a group, the group will rely on them because they're so powerful. And then there's other NPCs that could join the group that are powerful and or steer the characters in a different direction than they ought to be going. And that can be a real red herring, especially for a big adventure like this. So be careful about the NPCs. I wrote an article about this one. I wrote an article about both of these problems, and I'm going to be writing an article about the third. Be careful about putting the NPCs into the group. Make sure you only offer up the NPCs that are fitting the way you want the story to go, and make sure they have a way out, and make sure they don't overshadow the characters. I would not have Artist Simber and Dragonbait join the group, for example. And I did have one of the NPCs is a secret Coatl, and I had them always act as like a veteran until they showed that they're Coatl, and by that point they were out of the group. So they never really got to recognize the fact that they had this super powerful being. It's just like she basically acted like a veteran, and then every so often she'd drop and like, oh, I'm wounded, and she would stay out of the fight, but really she wasn't that badly wounded because she's a Coatl and kind of polymorphed Coatl. So that again is not a hard thing to fix. It's just, you know, a DM that's going to run this adventure should know about it. But I think you can, you know, I could fit these on a 3x5 card and say, like, before you play Tomb of Annihilation, consider these 2 things. But the third one to me has been the biggest one. I've talked about it on the show before. I'm going to talk about it right now again. And I got an article I'm writing about it, which is the shift of the lethality of the adventure is huge between everything up to the Tomb of the Nine Gods and then in the Tomb of the Nine Gods. And inside the tomb, it is deadly. And these characters that you spent, you know, in my case, a year with, suddenly just start dropping like flies for small things. Like, you know, you go into a box, you turn a key, you press a button, and you're disintegrated, right? And there was a whole character who's had this big character arc and all this stuff, and she got disintegrated by going to a box and someone else hit the key. Same character, same player, different character got disintegrated by Belcor as the Beholder. So it's so lethal. And I offer up a few different solutions to that. One is just don't have people die. Drop them to 0 hit points. You know, if they get hit by something like a disintegrate, then give them some kind of lingering injury. Take off a horn or something, and then have them drop to 0 and let them use. Hey, Grant Ellis is here. Hi, Grant. you know, drop them to 0 and give them a permanent injury or some other way that they've been kind of turned, give them some kind of curse, but don't just kill them outright. And that way it'd be really nice if the main characters could at least last until the end of the adventure. And maybe if they decide they're going to try to face a Sararak, then it goes poorly for them then. If you try to fight a Sararak, you're asking for trouble. So that's one option. And that's the one I like. I'm not a death, you know, I think Navy DM, so if I'm scrolling back through the chat here, Navy DM said, make the beginning either more deadly or the end of the tomb less so. So yeah, I guess if you ran the adventure that your characters are really temporary and you're going to have a constant cycle of characters that are going through and you're dying along your journey and you're picking up new guys along the way, the story has an arc, but the characters don't. And that's one way to run it. And that way, if they're cycling characters in Tomb of the Tomb of the Nine Gods too, it's not really that different. So that's possible. But, you know, it's kind of cheap to make it, I don't know. I would have had a hard time making it deadlier in the beginning. I didn't pull any punches in the beginning, but they didn't die because most of the time they're getting hit by disintegrates. Navy DM said SKT, the key for SKT was to tie my players' characters to the backstories into the world, specifically the Kraken Society. Yeah, SKT, Storm King's Thunder, tying the characters to the adventure can have a big one. Let's see, half a year into Storm King's Thunder. Yeah, half a year in and you're at chapter 3. Yeah, that's the way. I mean, it's you know, you can squeeze. I loved my Storm King's Thunder campaign. I had a really good time beginning to end. I loved it. But I had to do a lot of the work and because you have to fill in a lot of the details. So it's not like it has, I didn't have to do nearly as much work running Tomb of Annihilation as I did with Storm King's Thunder. But that said, I still enjoyed Storm King's Thunder a lot. I just would not put it as one of my highest, you know, from a value of buying the book. I think you can get a better value from some of the other ones. Let's see. Navy DM it's a very generous way of writing, but it's inefficient. Jarlaxle's an anti-hero type villain. Players are probably like him. Xanathar is comic over the top villain. Manchun is brooding. Yeah, Castellanters are tragic. I'm gonna run the Castellanters when I run it. Navy DM issue with the death curse as well. The breaks 5e's description of tears. Interesting. Oh, because it's a world-ending thing, and yet you're level 1 and going to solve it. That makes sense, right? Like typically, your level 1 characters are handling town problems, and the death curse doesn't even come up. So you could theoretically run Tomb of Annihilation and just have like small adventures focused around Port Nyanzaru for a while, and it's not until they start to get to tier 2 that it's like there's some kind of thing going on. We need you to, you know, the undead are fired up. We need you to go expand out and maybe go hit, you know, one of the camps nearby. And then they go to the camp and then they learn, and then they don't learn about the death curse until they're like well into tier 2. That would make sense because yeah, like the death curse itself is almost a tier 3 or tier 4 problem. You know, Navy DM says that, right? It's a worldwide threat. You would expect a tier 4. Yeah, why are they sending level 1s to solve a problem that's affecting the entire planet? Like, you know, you got these like Water Davian nobles and people is super like they can't get they can't get together and go handle this, right? Think about they could cast like 3 spells and at least figure out what the whole story is, much less maybe solve it. You know, I mean, granted, you got a wish caster who created the thing, so you probably can't beat it with a wish, but still. Navy DM says, I had to do more work for Horde of the Dragon Queen. I did have to do a lot of work for Horde of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat as well. And that's because, yeah, the adventure was written while the 5e rules were getting solidified, so there were parts of it that really didn't work. Also, it had like a whole chapter that was travel 1,000 miles. And that has to be dealt with. I wrote a whole big article about. It's another one. Like I look back and think about Horde and Rise, and I ran it for 2 groups, and I had a really good time with both. So I think it was worth. Those adventures are fine. Like they do need work. They're not fire and forget adventures, but they're good. They're good stories. The stories on those are really good. The whole Rise of Tiamat one was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Catharsis says, I think what keeps TOA from being a truly great is 2 adventures stuck together with 2 levels of lethality. Yes. Yeah, and to me that is by far the biggest problem. That, you know, it really feels like 2 adventures, but they don't have a clear ending. So you can't kind of end the adventure. And that's one of the options I offer is like and this would be more, and so if we fit Navy DM's sort of tiered approach, it could be that, you know, the quest for Tomb changes. The original quest for Tomb was, stop the death curse, right? But as Navy DM puts out, the death curse is a worldwide problem. It's really a world-ending problem. You consider all the souls are getting in, and then you consider that the threat that's feeding the souls, the thing that's getting fed the souls, is a world-ending threat. So that's kind of a big quest to throw on a level 1. But if you break up the quests by tier and you say tier 1 is, hang out in Port Nyanzaru and solve some small problems for the, get us connected. If you're being sent from like Baldur's Gate, it could be establish solid connections with the merchant princes, right? Connect to the merchant princes. And that's your job as level 1, is be ambassadors for our group in Baldur's Gate and go establish. And then the merchant princes is going to be like, well, let's see how you stand. Why don't you go and visit your Flaming Fist friends? And you could have these small quests that are all involved in the stuff going on inside chapter 1 and 2. And then by the time they get into tier 2, it could be there's a big problem with the death curse, and we need you guys to go find its source. We think it's somewhere south in Chult, and we need you to find its source. When you find it, let us know, and we have other heroes on standby to go deal with the threat. Right, and then so your tier 1 is connect to Port Nyanzaru. Tier 2 is find the source of the death curse, and really the tier 2 is open the tomb of the 9 gods is tier 2, and then that's the end of those characters. And tier 3, brand new characters, are end the death curse, and you have new characters for the tier 1 and tier could be the same characters, but your tier 3 characters are different. And they're probably like 10th level-ish. So that would then, and then you could cycle through your 10th level characters all the time because you just made them. It's not a big deal. That could be a solution as well. That kind of fits the tiers. So I think it is like, it hurts because I feel like Tomb of Annihilation is really one of the best adventures. And Curse of Strahd I think is still the best, but it's so thematic. And you might say like, I just don't want to do a vampire adventure. This one is very D&D like, that isn't really so thematically tied. It's very thematically tied into jungle threats and whatnot. It's not exactly like a straightforward Forgotten Realms style adventure. But I think that it has a lot of potential. I think it's probably the second best. I think it's really good. But these problems are big ones, though. These problems can very much derail it. But if you think about these problems compared to the problems like I think Navy DM was talking about Horde of the Dragon Queen. Like Horde of the Dragon Queen takes a lot of work. Like in these cases, in some of these, Storm King's Thunder and Horde of the Dragon Queen require more from the DM to rebuild it into a campaign than this one does. But this one, if you run it as written, and it feels like you almost could, you're going to be in a world of hurt, as Walter says in The Big Lebowski, you're going to be in a world of pain, that you're, because it hurts. Like I've watched players, and they're heartbroken when they see their characters die that they've been running for the last year. It sucks. So what else is going on? So what makes a good adventure? I've been thinking about this. Yesterday was sort of a homework day for me. That's just like your opinion, man. Yep. I just watched The Big Lebowski last weekend. It's the best movie. I've been doing some homework recently on really, I'm at a good stage in my current project to really think a lot. And I did this back with Return as well. Bring up Return. My notes are boring. Who wants to look at notes? Notice how my little window changes. There we go. So I did the same kind of homework when I did Return. One of the things, I took a month off from my day job to write Return to the Lazy Dungeon Master. And part of that month, much of that month was me sitting on a couch with an iPad, reading every book about game design and about RPGs that I could read. I read like every one of the dungeon, not all the way through, but many of the GM guides for many systems to try to see like how is it telling people how to prepare for the game and what areas overlap and all that sort of stuff. And I still miss stuff. I didn't notice until a couple days ago that the Dungeon Master's Guide talks about reskinning. You know, monster reskinning is one of the ways that it describes how to make a monster, you know, and I was like, wow, how, you know, it's kind of buried in the text. Like they could make a whole section out of it because it's so powerful, but instead they just sort of throw two or three sentences in there about the DM in the Dungeon Master's Guide about reskinning monsters. One hopes that they read the Dungeon Master's Guide, and one should. But it's easy to miss some of the features that they've got. This all came out when Jeremy Crawford was talking about companion characters and how to make companion characters. And he said, we have rules for companion characters, and we have rules. Hey, Step Back History, welcome. They have rules for companion characters, and they have rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide for leveling up monsters and giving them class levels. And I was like, really? Like, I didn't know that. Like, I've never seen anybody really do it. How interesting. And I read the Dungeon Master's Guide, and sure enough, there's a whole section on there on giving class levels to monsters. How was Orcus? Oh, Orcus. So funny. Step Back History said how Orcus was one of the 3 cats that we had last time. All 3 cats are adopted. Turns out we thought it was 3 boys. It turned out it was 2 boys and a girl, and Orcus was a girl. How funny, huh? The 2 boys got adopted right away, and Orcus got adopted about 3 hours later. So all of them are in nice homes, busy clawing the hell out of other people. But they had a good time. We really enjoyed having them, and we're happy. We knew they would get adopted. You know, kittens get adopted almost immediately, and they did. So they left our place. Michelle took them in. They were very sad. Michelle was very sad. They got their, got taken care of, and then were put up for adoption the following day, and off they went. One thing you'll notice about an animal shelter is that a lot of times people think animals are in there a long time. They typically are not. Most of the animals that are relatively easily adoptable get adopted very quickly. It's only ones that have, are sick or don't get along with other animals or don't get along with people very well. Those are the ones that don't move. And sometimes a combination of those, like the 14-year-old dog that doesn't like cats or other animals or kids. And you're like, that's going to be a hard thing to adopt, Not the main character says, the Dungeon Master's Guide is so readable, I find something new every time I look through it. I do too, and I think I made this a DM tip, but it's always worth going back and spending a little time with the Dungeon Master's Guide and just kind of rereading it. It might be a good lazy Sunday activity. Just grab the DMG and read some of the sections on it. It's really, really good. And the tables that it's got too are really great. A lot of good random tables for things. Anyway, so similar to when I was working on Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, gonna steal Mike. Just kidding. What are you gonna steal? I assume Lurking Grant is floating around to get Mike into a game. Yeah. He's gonna try to sneak me into a game. Could happen. Sitting here in my pajamas all day. So I did a lot of homework for Return, and I'm working on a new project, and I'm doing a lot of homework on that too. And I try to I have ideas, of course, but I also want to kind of step back and do some research and really look at things and try to get as wide a view as I can. And the topic that I've been sort of focusing on is what makes a great adventure, like a published adventure. What makes a good published adventure? And there's some really good material out there. Goodman Games has they have both a PDF outline and a book called How to Write Modules That Don't Suck. Let me see if I can find this here. How to Write Adventure Modules That Don't Suck. Here it is on RPG Now. There is also, I think, we'll go back here and say file type PDF. There was a free outline. This is it. So this is not illegal. It's on their website, Goodman Games. This is an outline for a 2007 seminar about adventures. And it's got really good ones. What are the things? This is by Goodman, right? What are the things they look for in an adventure submission? So the good thing here is here's somebody who's read hundreds and hundreds of adventure submissions and knows what's good and what isn't. And they made a nice, clean outline. This is a super digestible outline of what makes a good adventure. And, I think it's a good, this is a good sense. Also, Wolfgang Bauer Wolfgang Bauer wrote a series of articles. I'm going to put these in the show notes too. On what makes a good adventure. It's a 6-part series. And so we'll say Wolfgang Bauer, Adventure Builder. So here's the whole series, setting the hook. Whoops. Yeah. So there's a whole series of these. You can search for the rest. I did just tweet these. Uh-oh. Joe is here. You're not supposed to be here, Joe. I'm going to give spoilers about Get Your Rack. Joe here, Joe Cup, is one of the players in my Sunday game who won't be playing because we got snowed out. Sorry, Joe. I wanted to play. But I did tweet these out, yeah. And I haven't poured fully over all the Wolfgang stuff yet. I did ask him on Twitter, did he have any changes to what he's written here over the years? Because it's now been 11 years. And he said, not really. You know, a lot of the stuff that's here is really 3.5-ish sort of stuff because that was what was going on back then. But he said a lot of it still holds up. So, whoops, I guess I can save it. Talkna. What's her name? So these are real good ones. And, I have lots of thoughts on my own, and they come from here. And what I try to do is sort of get a lot of information. Lots of thoughts, lots of ideas from lots of different places, and then sort of draw the connections between them. And that's sort of what I did with Return, that you kind of want to, take a scientific approach to this of like what's out there, what gets attention, what doesn't, like what fails. We spend a lot of time. This is something that I think about a lot, and which is we as people tend to focus on outliers a lot, and we don't consider at all the failures and whether or not the criteria that identify the outliers, whether those criteria also identify failures. So an example is like writers, that there's been a million articles about like what are the good habits of writers, and they'll say like, well, we went and talked to J.K. Rowling and Stephen King and Grisham and all these other writers to hear like what their criteria were. And we wrote those criteria down, and it's like they all get up early and write first thing, and they all do, they all have like clear spaces where they write in quiet. And J.K. Rowling got a castle. I read a book recently. I actually read a book right before I did Return about how to sort of, how to build a creative space. I can't remember exactly what it was. It wasn't a terrible book, and it kind of points to some science that kind of talks about the importance of focus and how to have these sort of long periods of uninterrupted time. But the reality is none of it was like, well, that might be true of everybody, and the real truth is random chance, that like J.K. Rowling, how many people wrote really good fantasy novels we never heard of before? Maybe, who knows? Maybe not a million, but maybe a couple hundred, right? There's a lot of them out there, and then sort of right place at the right time was what got them into the eye of the public. So not to bash that stuff, like I would never say like, oh, Stephen King only owes his value to luck, but there could be lots of people who write clearly and well like Stephen King and are as prolific as he is, but they haven't been picked up. And so we have to be careful about when we pick up criteria. Yeah. So Barry, quite contrary, great name, says survivorship bias. And that's exactly right. Survivorship bias is a huge problem. I'm reading a big book about survivorship bias now. Nassim Taleb, who wrote The Black Swan, wrote a whole bunch of them. And he wrote one called Fooled by Randomness. And it's all basically survivorship bias. Yeah, I don't think the castle helped their writing. Who has a? There was another guy in this book. This is one of my favorites, and you're like, oh my god, like the freaking elitism here. A guy would book a flight to Tokyo from New York or something like that, and he would write on the flight to Tokyo and get to Tokyo and then fly right back again. And that was his way of like making sure that he couldn't be bothered. And it's like, shut your cell phone off and save yourself $2,000. You know, like, oh my God, go to the library. You know, like you don't need to book a flight to Tokyo. Shut the phone off. Seriously. And I guess it was like he had to put himself in a spot where he couldn't do it on his own. It's like, for fun. Like, give me a break. Just go to Starbucks and shut off your stuff. And I did that for Return. Like, I basically wrote 2 hours in the mornings on the book, and then in the afternoon I would do the research. And in the morning, I would, give myself a good amount of time to surf Twitter and do all my stuff and check my email and kind of feel like I, was connected to the zeitgeist. And then about 10 o'clock, I would switch my phone in airplane mode and put my music on and set an alarm for 2 hours. And I was not allowed to break or reset. And I actually shut my computer off. The most dangerous thing was like I was writing offline, which means I wasn't backing up. But it was for 2 hours. Like my computer's not going to die. I just shut my machine off for 2 hours. I just disconnected from the internet completely for 2 hours and did my writing. And then when I was done, I shut it back on and go look at Twitter and do everything else and have some lunch and take a walk and do some other stuff. I don't know that has anything to do with whether or not the book was any good. Like all that criteria doesn't really matter. So, Newbie DM says, for my writing, I try to sleep like 14 hours before, right while in a gilded tub with truffle bath soap while drinking 40-year-old whiskey. Yeah, I can't possibly do any good writing without 40-year-old whiskey and a gilded bathtub. So my favorite, and I wrote this on my personal website. Let's see. The Habits of Hunter S. Thompson. This is a fun. I'll let you guys enjoy this. I tried to compare the writing habits or the daily habits of Benjamin Franklin and Hunter S. Thompson, and to try to see like what what went off. And I found it. I'll add this to the show notes if you want. I suppose I should bring back my list here. I like pot to take the edge off. Where's that? Yeah, and then the other one I like is 10 p.m. drops acid, 11 p.m. chartreuse, cocaine, grass, 11:30 grass, 12 a.m. Hunter ready to write, 12:05 chartreuse, cocaine, grass, Chivas, coffee, Heineken, clove cigarettes, grapefruit, Dunhills, orange juice, and gin. So he wrote for 5 minutes. So I enjoy that. And 6 p.m. is grass to take the edge off. That's the writing habits of Hunter S. Thompson. All of this is to say that when I'm looking at published adventures, I don't want to just look at the top ones and say why are the best adventures great. I also want to look at like what is typical to adventures overall, and also what are the criteria of the ones that tend to fail. And I've been interested in reading a lot of the comments on Season 8 adventures for the Adventurers League, which had took a radical shift. And there's all kinds of interesting stuff on there. I did a poll on Twitter recently, and it's still going, so I don't know what the results are. Navy DM said, oh boy, yeah. About whether or not people are satisfied with Season 8 overall. And I didn't break it out by adventures, and I didn't break it out by the new rule changes. Let's see if I can find it. We'll see where the results are. You're not supposed to look at the results until they're done, but what the hell, we're not exactly scientists here. Go to my tweets. Go Going through all... Here we go. Let's bang on that. So we'll add this to the show notes too. The answer is not really. So what is that? A little less than, about 2/3 or so. As someone whose group TRI is intertwined heavily with season 8, it's been a lot to deal with. Navy DM, I'd be curious on your views on season 8 adventures and how they're written. Step Back History says, the trick to being a writer seems to be just to figure yourself out. I'll go with Stephen King's definition of how to be a writer, which is read a lot and write a lot. If you want to be a writer, write. It's one word, just go write. And don't worry about the Chavez and the gilded bathtub and the, flying to Tokyo. And don't take my advice, write, but who knows? My 3 favorite pieces of advice for artists came from John Baldessari, the pop artist. He won the presidential award for Merit of the Arts a few years ago. And his 3 pieces of advice were, you must be obsessed, which you cannot will. Talent is cheap, and be at the right place at the right time. And what I like about those 3 pieces of advice are all 3 of them are basically out of your control. Like if you are trying to say, like, I want to be a writer, but I don't really like writing, don't be a writer. Go be whatever. Go be something else. Right. Yeah. Step Back History says, write, not too much, mostly plants. That is awesome advice. That's a great quote. I'm sticking that in the show notes. That is awesome. Hysterical. If you don't know that quote, go Google it. It's not about writing, it's about eating, but whatever. The obsessed you cannot will, like I'm never going to stop writing. I don't know if I'm never going to stop writing, but like I feel weird when I don't write. I'm not saying I'm anybody special, but I write every day. I write like 500 words a day of something, whatever it is. And many times I wrote 3,000 words last Saturday, and I don't know if anybody's ever going to see it, but I just wrote it because I had an idea and I want to write it. It's not hard for me to write like that. And I don't know that that's true for everybody. I don't know. Self-help and advice and all that, I'm not a big fan of. I think that, people live the lives they live, and you pick up tips where you can and share from other people's experiences. And sometimes you can change yourself and sometimes you can't. And sometimes you are what you want. Like, one thing is I wasn't nearly as creative, a bunch of years ago as I am now. Probably 10 years ago. I remember I was like, I really want to do more. I really want to make more stuff. And now I'm like, I'm making plenty. I'm doing everything I want to do. So yeah, looking at adventures. And like, what are some of the adventures that work really well? And what I like is, especially now in the DMs Guild, there are lots of different kinds of adventures that are going on out there. And what's the Shadow over Driftwood? No. What the hell's the name of it? I just got a copy. Step Back History says, I definitely want to change gears and make a piece of D&D content just to give back a bit. Yeah, I was thinking about writing a small adventure for DM's Guild. I was talking to my wife about that yesterday. That'd be kind of fun to take one adventure and sort of write on it. But I've got another big thing I'm working on. I'm procrastinating a lot. And I'm procrastinating by doing other things. So it's not like I'm not making stuff. It's not Shadows over Innismouth. There was Dark Chapel? Drift Chapel. Here it is. It's an adventure kit. And I think these guys finished their... let's see if it's on... I can't spell. I guess it's not out yet. But I backed this Kickstarter, And these guys, what are they called? Absolute Tabletop. Let's yeah. So they don't have it yet on here, but they have these kinds of adventures that are worth looking at. I'm gonna and they don't write standard adventures. They write adventure kits where they offer lots of different like ways to shift the theme of the overall adventure. And you sort of build your own, here's a whole like the dice dungeon drop generator. They have a whole different way of thinking about how to build dungeons. Like, this is kind of cool. You roll the dice out and the layout of the dice helps determine what the layout of the dungeon is like. They have lots of sort of, this sort of style. Heavy on the randomness. And I think randomness is a really interesting way to do it. So they did another one. This one called Shadows Over Drift Chapel that they kickstarted. It did well. It worked. They funded. I backed it. 31 grand with 1,000 backers, and it's super well done. Like, it's a really well done. Vornheim. Did they do what's Vornheim? Vornheim, the complete city kit. Oh yeah, I haven't seen that. But lots of, sort of a box full of improvisational stuff. Like, it has a theme to it. And Drift Chapel has a theme. It is this very Cthulhu, flintlock fantasy, adventure kit. And when you think about what they did with the Kickstarter, they got a lot of fantastic art. It really looks beautiful. Really good book. I've been talking to them, and like we keep saying, like, oh, we should do something together. And then I'm like, yeah, we should. I'd love to, but things. So I'm heavily inspired. I like their idea, the ideas to this a lot. I really haven't dug all the way through it, but the idea of a adventure toolkit, I think, is a really powerful idea. Grant, have you run this stuff? I know you run everything. Have you run the adventure kits before, and if so, which one, and how did it go? Oath of the Frozen King is right here, by the way. It's $10 for the PDF, and it's worth it. So I've been looking at all this stuff, right, and trying to say, oh, look, hey, I'm making him sale. I should have put in a link for affiliate. So Step Back History says, that sounds like what I want to make, a town with interesting people and leads a DM could pull on. Yeah. I do think that, like, what people need, what I believe people need, and I go back to, like, well, what do I want when I buy it? Like, I buy a ton of stuff. My whole desk is loaded here with stuff, right? And my whole bookshelf over there is loaded with stuff that I buy. I actually stopped. I made a firm rule that I only buy PDFs now, because I'm just going to fill this house up with stuff, and I don't play a lot of it. I just read it. Well, I can read on my iPad. These are all the adventure kits are 5e. They're not DM Guild. They're outside, so they're OGL 5e, but they run, yeah. Buy a bigger house. Yeah, right. That's expensive. So I buy PDFs of everything because I can just read it on my iPad, and I don't feel the limitation of buying stuff. Like, I'd feel bad about constantly buying new physical books, but I don't feel that way. I'll fill a hard drive easily. It's 20 megabytes or whatever. So I've been buying lots and lots of them and kind of looking at them and sort of seeing what I like. And I love, like, Rob Schwab's adventures. Like, he writes these really he writes these real short. Let's see. Do they have product type? They have adventures. Been encore books. I'm surprised adventure isn't an option. let's try to pick one that doesn't have like horrible things on the cover. So he writes these short, these short adventures, that are $2, right? And they are usually like this is 16 pages. They're usually very short adventures, and they're pretty prescriptive. Like they kind of say, here are the big things that are going on. They don't usually have read aloud text, I don't think. The dungeons are relatively short. But they get across like a good, clear adventure, and then it's sort of up to the DM to fill in the pieces. But they also have wonderful artwork and a great design. I really love how they look, and I bought tons of. I got many of them from the original Kickstarter. So that's a model that I've been looking at. The Shadow Adventures. Death in the Cornfields. Yeah, I've heard about that. That's Merrick's adventure. Is that a DM Guild one? That was a. I think that was for Curse of Strahd, right? He has like 10 adventures in a small bundle. The pirate one for Shadow the Demon Lord. Yeah, those are great, right? He has 75 cents. Man, dude needs to up his price. Yeah, 4-page adventure, right? Really, really small one about a crazy scarecrow, and it's a good creepy one. I like this one. It's a Curse of Strahd. It's like an encounter, right? Like a real short encounter. Catharsis says, I'm not that fond of box text. Well, so I am. And I am because I do feel that it is a quick way. I feel like I have to do a lot less prep as a DM when I'm running one that has box text. I usually read the box text. And yes, so Navy DM I think hits the nail on the head, which is succinct box text. 2 to 3 sentences, short, not a great big diatribe, not a big story, and not a big thing that's railroading the adventure, but instead just like give me the 3-line description of the room so that I can read it out loud and it tells the players what's important in an area. I usually don't do box text for scenes that take place. I'll usually stick to the setting, what's physically there that isn't people, because the people could change. The only difference is for the start of an adventure, I'll usually write some box text for the start. Again, to kind of help the DM just read this out loud and like, wow, we're getting attacked by zombie gnomes. Spoiler. You might see an adventure with zombie gnomes in the future. So if you're writing an adventure that you want DMs to be able to sit down and run fast, a box text with a strong start is a great way to help ensure that the DM isn't meandering about. So I think that good box text is important, and mine are going to have it. Like some adventures have it, some don't. The season 8 ones do not. But I think my adventures in the past and in the future will have it, because I feel that for lazy DMs, it's the kind of thing that I can offer to a lazy DM. Navy DM says, since the AL doesn't allow box text anymore, I now put a thematic quote at the beginning of each major section. So now you have to do it, right? So Navy DM, you're writing your own box text, right? What a pain in the ass. Like, they could have done that, right? You paying them money. Like, why don't they just say, like, you... And the other thing is, like, ignore it if you don't like it, you know? Ignore it if you don't like it. And hopefully, but the problem is, like, it gets wordy. Like, people write and write and write and write. And I think that a bigger problem, some people say they don't like box text. I don't know. I'm probably putting words in their mouth, but I know what I don't like, and I don't like to read a ton. Like, I want hook me with your adventure idea, but be brief and be specific about how the adventure is going to run. And there's some James Joycean box text out there. Yeah, right. Like, don't overdo it. Don't, and then be specific. And I also like. I think that Tomb does this, and I think other adventures do this too. That you don't have to do it for every room, right? Like, if you have a big dungeon with lots of rooms, not every one of them needs box text, but you might do it for the ones that have a lot of pieces that you want people to remember. So I think a lot of the D&D published ones, the big hardback ones, mix in boxed and text and non, and I think that's valuable. So I think the Dungeon of the Mad Mage doesn't have it, and I think I'm gonna miss it. You know, I think I like the box text. I don't remember if let's take a look. Does Dragon Heist have it? I thought it did. Yeah, right? Big block of box text. More box text. More box text. So it's kind of funny that it says Season 8, no box text, except the Season 8 Keystone Adventure is filled with it. Step Back History says, if you're wanting to give some advice, I really struggle when doing the fantastic locations. They're important, and I'd love advice for doing it. I'm going to be a little bit of a jerk and say, well, it's in the book. Well, let me take a look at the book. So there's a whole chapter on building fantastic locations, chapter 7. And a hard part for me these days is because I just finished the book, and many of the questions that come from it, I would suggest poking through this, because this is it. This is all I've got. It's not that I'm being a schmuck and saying, like, go read the book. Really, I don't have much more than what's in here. Going big and make it easy on yourself. I've been writing a lot of fantastic locations recently, and the way I do it is I try to what's interesting about this place. Okay, it's a giant keep. A giant worked stone block in the middle of a cavern. Right, like it was carved right out of the natural stone, but has these smooth walls. Okay, so giant keep block, right? And this is terrible, but work with me. And then it's like, okay, so what are the 3 interesting features that it has? Well, it's got a giant cracked door in the front, and it has these weird black obelisks that surround it. And right in front of the door, inlaid in silver, is a big weird glyph that cannot be crossed, right? And so now that's all I need. And I write that down. And now I've got enough in my head as a DM to say, I can describe what that is. And I can also, what does it mean? Well, obviously the keep is meant to see, I've been big on, there's a book called The Keep and the movie of the same name, where they have a keep that's trapping an ancient evil. And inside of it, it's like a cell. And so the idea is like it cannot leave this place. The obelisks are sort of putting a power around the keep, but the door is cracked, so now it has a potential way to escape. And there's that silver glyph on the floor that once meant nobody could cross in or out except those who were holy and could protect it. So you can kind of build off of that. So to me, that's what makes a fantastic location. If you need, I'll offer this. Well, the workbook also has a. And I'm not saying like this is the end all be all of fantastic locations. You gotta kind of study it, but make them big, make them interesting and fantastic. Go look at art, think about the movies and what makes those. Like, look at Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, right? And it's like, here's an entire temple built into the side of a cliff, and you're like, how much work did it take to carve a temple out of the side of a cliff wall? And that place is real too. It really exists. And if you need inspiration, here in the Lazy Dungeon Master Workbook, we have a random monument table. And here is a way, let's do some rolling. I've got my dice sitting here. So who made it? 59. Oh, whoops, that's a 20 roll. So 15. It is an astral thing. And what condition is it in? It is desecrated. Ooh, a desecrated astral thing. 16. Fearful. And what is it? We'll do a 82. A sundial. A desecrated astral fearful sundial. Right? And you kind of imagine, like, what's that like? Well, it's probably huge. I always like to make things big, right? So you go out and there's hidden inside the cliff is a sundial, but the sundial doesn't work. And like you look at the pattern on the ground and it does not match the sun up above. It's matching sort of, the current position of the prime plane and the astral plane, but it's cracked, right? And there's like smoke weird dust between worlds flowing through it. And when you look at it, you are filled with trepidation. You know, in fact, why doesn't everybody make a saving throw for me? So, you know, so I don't know. You just use randomness for inspiration. Look at art and get inspired by art, and then read chapter 7. You know, I'm trying not to be a schmuck about it. If we go back, I missed a whole bunch of. Wow, there's a whole lot of chatter. That's the thing, to structure an adventure. Give me the plot in 200 words or less right from the start. Yeah, 200 words is a lot for a plot. I think the plot really needs to be pretty straight. And a lot of good adventures do this. Like right up front, one paragraph, this is what it's about. And then an outline of like, this is what can happen during the adventure. So you're like, okay, I've got it. You know, yeah, it would be interesting. Can I put enough in the front to go, I know what this adventure is about. And like in theory, I don't need anything else. I could just run with that paragraph, maybe. Too many published adventures like to lead the GM and reveal story bits as the player would find them out, but that doesn't suit because I need to know the important. Yeah, right. So one of the things that I'm doing the adventures I wrote for Fantastic Adventures, and probably adventures I'll do in the future, and I even did for some published ones, was the secrets. Right, like if you look at the secrets and clues, those can tell you what an adventure is about. If you do 10 or 12 of those. You know, you say like here's the following information the characters might learn throughout the adventure, and it's like bang, 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 and you know that outline is like here are the important points. Like we're not surprising the DM, right? We want to surprise the players, but you're never really going to be able to surprise the players either. They might be randomly surprised, but if you have a mystery or like a big twist, you know the problem with the twist is a lot of times they figure it out. They're smart, you know, and these things are not that unique. So I think building an interesting situation and having lots of different little hooks and things. What happens if the players do nothing? That's a good one. Yeah, what drives them? A hook is a big one. Hook is something that's kind of missing from Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, by the way. Like, I don't talk about what hooks people into the adventures you've got. I kind of assume that's already done, or that you're in the middle of something and you've got it. But that can be important, and I don't know that I gave it enough weight. I hardly gave it any weight in the book, and I think that might have been a misstep. I think that a little bit about the importance of adventure hooks should have been in this book. So who knows? 10 years, I'll write another one. Verb phrase. My pitch, here the flavor of the theme of and then a short paragraph. What's the verb? Kill the wizard. You know, I wrote a module for Wizards of the Coast 10 years ago called Kill the Wizard, and Chris Perkins, who made the title, I didn't make the title, but Chris Perkins made the title, and he said it was like the best title they ever came up with because it's just so clear. You know, I was like Rise of Tiamat because it's like Stop Tiamat's Rise is the theme, you know, and you're like, good, you know. Not the main character says, a lot of time, what is the villain even trying to accomplish? Right. You know, make it clear. Like, what is your villain trying to do? What's going on here? Right. That should be in that initial paragraph. Like, a secret cult is trying to unleash the ultimate darkness that will take over the planet. And they're doing so with an artifact that is found deep in an ancient vault that just recently got uncovered because of a big earthquake. You know, okay. So we're trying to stop that group, right? You know, pitches are player facing. Interesting. NPC text is the worst. She has a secret that even he doesn't know. What secret? I need to know so I can roleplay as this character. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Why is it familiar? What's its function? Why is it fantastic? Seems to help. Yeah, like what's going on here? I think a lot of times it's like, what did a place used to be is a good question to ask. Let's see. Just going more through the chats here. Step Back History says it used the table to make a shrine where ancient deep gnomes used a shard of the upper planes to power constructs and then do radiant damage. Yeah, right? So, you know, the charts are tools, and they're meant to just sort of bring your brain outside of your normal way of thinking. Like, I think that's where randomness really helps, and that's where these random tables, I think, can really help us. They just kind of, you know, they just kind of push you outside of you're riding in a groove, and it's a groove you've been riding for your whole life, and then here's a little randomness to just knock you out of your groove and get your bike to shake a little bit. It's a terrible metaphor, but you get what I mean. Like sometimes we need to step out of the hole that we're dug for ourselves, and sometimes randomness can help us step out of that hole. Let's see. What % of adventures are now written with the lonely fun in mind? It's a good question. So the Step Back History says Lazy Dungeon Master 3 has a new step. I'm not going to add a 9th. I don't know. Like, I talk about the hooks, and the importance of a hook, but I think you could fit hooks into all this stuff. And strong start. The strong start also kind of includes the hook. Why do people care? What gets them to go forward? But I think when adventure writing, I think the hooks are more important in adventure writing. One could say that hooks are sort of written in throughout all of these other steps. That the strong start, putting your character, thinking about your characters. When you think about your characters, you think about what they care about, and the connection to the adventure is a big piece of that. What percentage of the adventures are now written with the lonely fun in mind and less just like the guts on running? Yeah, so that's a good question, and it's a hard thing. So, an adventure needs to be an interesting thing to read and kind of explore as a lonely fun concept. And I think good artwork and good maps can really make somebody excited about something. That's the way I am with Schwab stuff. Like I haven't run any Shadow of the Demon Lord game, but I've got 100 Shadow of the Demon Lord products. I hope to run it soon. And, but I just like reading them. They're fun to read, and the art, and the art and the style gets me a lot. Even though they're written a brief thing to kind of get you excited, you think about, that's what that's like. But that idea of like, how do you write an adventure that's fun to read on its own, that isn't a story, right? And that is still runnable. It's a good question, and I don't know. I'm gonna lean heavy on artwork, I think. Song of Ice and Fire campaign, I prepped a grand plot by writing what would happen, beginning to end, if the players didn't get involved. It let me then maneuver. Yeah, so that's something that RPG Webby said, that they prepped the whole plot ahead of time, regardless of the characters. I was just writing about, I'm writing an article for another thing, and I was editing it yesterday, and I talked about that idea of like, how do you design a location, and let's see, where's the lazy campaign? I'm pretty sure this has the spiral campaign. Yeah, the fronts, right? This whole chapter kind of talks a little bit about that. I lost my train of thought. Oh, building it without the characters in mind. So yeah, when you do fronts, you do that, right? Like the whole idea of writing a front, you have a force. You have the cult of the cult of the Black Sun, right? And the cult of the Black Sun, their goal is to bring night to the world permanently, right? And so how are they getting there? Well, they need, they need power, and they need knowledge, and they need these things. So where do they get the power and knowledge? Well, they get the power from tapping into sources of a material called void water, and they get the knowledge from ancient tomes written by people 1,000 years ago that were well lost, and they have to go find those tomes, right? So they have these steps that they have to take and places they have to go to get it, and then their end goal is that they will be able to do these using this power, this material that they've acquired, and the dark rituals. They will be able to blot out the sun permanently and ensure that night falls upon the world forever. I didn't mention any characters in there, but there's lots of places where the characters can find out, like, how that's going on. And all of those have little splinters. Like maybe they need lore from lots of different places. Maybe they're trying to hunt down the lost relics of a lich who has been destroyed. There's lots of little ways that can go on. But I also think when you're building a place, and this was what I was writing about yesterday, that if you build a place, you can sort of build the place without thinking about scenes. You could have like, here is the Shattered Lich's tomb, right? This is a lich whose where his phylactery was and his sanctuary was destroyed, and he was destroyed. The lich is gone, but all of his stuff, including some of the protections, are there, and maybe they're all wonky, right? So you say like, well, what would a lich have in this place? Well, he'd probably have some golems, and he'd probably have some other guardians and lots of weird traps and stuff to make sure that other people couldn't sneak into his place. you kind of design, and then you say, like, okay, and now the Cult of the Black Sun is trying to get into the Lich's shattered place because they want to acquire a book that he had. So now they're there, but many of them have died on the way in because they got killed by the traps, and some of them were reanimated because the Lich liked to reanimate his enemies. So parts of his lair will reanimate the enemies and get them into Guardians again. So you kind of say, like, all that's going on, and then the characters sort of walk in, and here's the situation. Right? You didn't say, like, scene 1, they're going to face this guy, and scene 2, they're going to do this. You said they can go in, and this is what's happening there. And I think thinking about it that way without considering the characters is a pretty powerful idea. We have gone 15 minutes longer than normal, and I could just sit here talking all day, and I don't think we want to do that. So I am going to call it a day. I want to thank all of you for a wonderful conversation in Twitch chat. I hope you found some interesting points today. Next week we will get back to talking about my normal game, and I hope you guys get some D&D in. So everybody have a great week.